I'm going to be doing an embroidery of a fox in a field of flowers, or forget-me-nots or bluebells or something. And it's actually the embroidery that the lady who won the 10,000 subscriber draw wanted me to stitch for her. And it's taken me a while to get around to it. And obviously I won't be posting this until I know that she's received it. However, just about to start, I have tacked down some brown linen off an old skirt, and this is also wool from a second-hand skirt. And I'm going to do a bit of a woodland up here and some grass like a meadow, and then there's going to be a fox in the middle. And to start off with, I have torn up one of my old paint rags. You can see it's marked with paint, and I've just torn it up, and I'm going to embroider these on as sort of, I don't know, something like silver birch stems or something like that. And that's how I'm going to lay in this background first. So I'll just take some threads off, and I've got 3 strands of sort of a mid-brown in my needle. And so first things first, I'm just going to get some trunks in that can be the woodland, which is really sort of in the background. As you can see, I've moved this piece of stitching quite a way further on, because in the end this was just lots of straight stitches put on with some French knots. So I'm aiming for a field filled with forget-me-nots and a fox that's just been caught looking straight at you. I've darkened the silver birch down because they looked far too light, so I've just done that with some Inktense, and I've now got some shrubs in the background that are just made out of green lining fabric because they were a little bit see-through, and I thought they worked really well, and they've just been put on with fly stitch. So for all of this texture here, I've used combinations of 3 strands of stranded cotton and crewel wool, pearl cotton. This bright here at the front is linen, this lovely pale linen, which I thought would really make a really good foreground. And I've tried to make it darker as I got to the back and shorten the stitches. So although it still needs to be finished here, I felt I was ready for actually putting the fox on, because the grass will have to come up around his feet anyway. So there's no point me going and stitching any further forward here. And I've used some jersey fabric left over from a cardigan that I made a couple of years ago, and it just seemed the perfect colour. So although I don't normally embroider on top of jersey, I couldn't resist using the colour for the fox. And I've got threads ready. I've got some vintage crewel wools there. I haven't got any white, and I've cut out a piece of blanket for his white chest. So I'm hoping to just split down these 2 crewel wools, which are cream and a beigey cream, and I'm hoping they'll be fine because I don't have any white at all. If I need some white, I'll have to amend it with white stranded cotton. And I've also got these tapestry wool greens as well, because I was running out of crewel wool greens. I've only got that one left. So I've just had little bits of things. So I'm just going to mix and match all of the greens together and hope that works out. It should. But I'm going to hoop up now, and I'm going to start to put the fox in, and I thought that would be more interesting to watch than me just putting lots of straight stitches to make grass. I've now got my hoop in my stand, and I'm going to start and just stitch this piece of fabric down and just try and get the shapes going. And I've just put this old vintage rusty coloured wool in, this old Penelope crewel wool. And I've got a sharp point on my needle, but not too big an eye actually, because this green material is quite difficult to get through. And so I didn't want anything that was too large to be pulling through. So I just need to get shapes down first before I start to do all the over stitching. And once the shapes are all in place, then I can decide to do the bunny bits. So I'm just going to go up the ears. I realise I haven't got an ear there. That's because it'll be embroidery anyway, and that just fitted on my scrap of fabric. So I'm not too bothered if they're not in the right place, but I'm just at the shape of the... Now I know why I don't want to embroider on jersey, really. It's a pain sometimes. Just going to get the shape of the face here. Once it all gets on, it'll be much easier. And I'll be taking the stitches off into the background every time. I think I want to stitch the white part of his chest on. Somewhere about there. And his nose will be down on here somewhere. Just put the stitches in the right plane for where the nose is. I'll continue to take stitching down his back, and then I can do without the pin. And I think I can put his tail on. I'll just tuck it under there and see where I think it looks best. Don't want it to go too near the edge. I think down in the grass. I think there. I'll just continue stitching down. Some of these pieces might actually be hidden by the grass. That's why I didn't want to go any further until I got him into place, because I might cover a lot of this up. If you've watched any of my bird videos, you'll know I hate doing the feet. So I'm quite pleased I've set him in long grass, because I don't have to deal with feet. It's been nice stitching this. This is quite a bit bigger than I normally would do, but I wanted to be able to do a proper little scene. And once I actually saw a photograph online of a fox standing in the forget-me-nots, and as soon as I saw that, I knew that's the image I would try and go for. So I'll get the rest of him stitched on. I've got another leg here. Where's his leg? So I'll put his legs on, and when I'm ready to do the face, I will come back and show you that interesting bit. If I can get that down there. So I have basically got his body. I've managed to get the highlights done on the nose and round the ears a bit, and I just sort of put black stitches in to get the facial features, so I know where the eyes are going to be. They're not going to be like that, but that's sort of where they need to go. And I thought before I did any further, I'm just going to try and get some shading onto his lovely chest and the bottom of his face, and I'm using the soft cotton. And because this is paler than the wool, I should be able to get proper highlights and shading by just over stitching this here. I do love foxes. When I was very little, my grandparents lived in the countryside, and we used to go and stay there during the summer holidays for a little, so my mum could have a bit of a rest from having 4 of us, because I'm eldest of 4. And then we used to go every Saturday for our lunch and our tea and spend the day at Grandma's. And Granda used to be a very countryside person, and he found a baby fox that was getting attacked by crows, and the mother was nowhere to be seen, and he thought maybe she'd been shot or something. And so this little baby had a bald head, and the crows were sort of pecking at it. So he picked it up and brought it back home with him. And in the end, he made a pen, and we used to just call it Sandy. I don't know why we called it Sandy, or he called it Sandy. Anyway, it lived in the garden, and he built it a pen for it to be in. But it used to roam in the garden as well, but it used to go in this pen overnight. And the hair did grow back on its head and everything. And it used to hear our car when my dad drove up on a Saturday. You would start and hear it bark because it recognised the sound of the car. So eventually, Grandad set it free again in the woods on the other side of where his garden was. And off it went to live in the woods like it should have done all the time. But he used to be able to go and stand and call for it, and it used to come to him. So that's many years ago. But we sort of played with it like it was a dog almost. So I do love foxes, and I do remember it very well. Because we didn't live in the countryside. We lived in a colliery house because my dad was a miner. So going to Grandma's was always really lovely. The wool is actually making a really good background to stitch on. I really need to be making a bit shorter stitches really, but I quite like to just go around getting everything laid in where I know they need to be, and then go back to overstitch where I need to. It's the way I end up getting a sense of what I'm stitching. So actually when I'm looking at my photograph of my fox, there's hardly any white there. It's all more of a dirty brown and then some really dark shadows. And so I shall be trying to do exactly the same. Just blend the stitches together with the orangey ones I've already put in. And hopefully I'll be able to put some fine whiskers on and everything. I'll do some more on this and I'll come back when I'm ready for the eyes. And then I'll have to get some quite dark shading here to get his face shaded out. And then it'll be time for his eyes. Just finish that thread off. I have done quite a bit of stitching on here now, just to get everything going, but I'm ready to try and finish the face, which doesn't quite look in proportion to me at the moment, but I'm hoping it's just because I need to get the eyes in at the proper size. And so if I can get the eyes in and a bit of shading around, I should be able to bring this together. And so this is just where the eyes are placed, and I'm going to just start and do an outline first. I've got two lots of thread here. One's a very dark brown and one's black, and it's just the way that I ended up with leading things in after I did the ears. I'm just going to take tiny back stitches here and just try and sculpt in where I know the eyes have to be. It's always proportions in the end that you can get away with a lot of stuff as long as you've got the right proportions for things. But if your proportions aren't right, then it doesn't matter really how good your stitching is or how bad your stitching is. If the proportions of what you're trying to do are not right, it doesn't really matter, you can't bring it back. So I'm hoping that it's just the fact that I didn't have the eyes in properly. But I quite like to do them last. You see, that's making a big difference. So I think I'm going to thicken off that bottom line. I might not need this extra. I'm going to try and leave a bit of the brown here because the eyes are brown. Although I think it's too tiny actually. I'm going to just fill in the eye. And I'm going to finish that thread off. I'm just taking it underneath. And I use this one now. And maybe just a tiny little line coming down towards the nose. And then I'm going to hop over on the other side and try my best to get the exact same one in. It's definitely made a good difference already. I probably just need to widen the fur here a bit. Oh, that's definitely, I think it was all to do just that I'd placed the eyes but I hadn't actually got the shape of them. That's okay. I'm going to put the last little stitch in here and then get some of this reddish brown to do some shading around the face. Fasten this thread off too. Just cut those two off. And to get the reddish brown, I've got one strand here. There's the white wool, the creamy cotton, thick cotton. Then I've got white stranded cotton in. All this red is stranded cotton, the black stranded cotton. Yeah, it's been a total mixture. Right, I'm going to start and lay some of this reddish brown in. And hopefully get the face looking nice. Definitely want more red here. Lead it all out from the eyes. I definitely feel like I need more width here. So I'm going to put a few long stitches on and then fill in with the orangey crewel wool. His eyebrows coming, and I can put a dark mark right down to define his nose and his snout. And I might have taken the highlight a bit high, so I'm going to put the red brown in here too. Probably need 2 strands because it's disappearing a little. I can take it around his other eyebrow. And once I'm happy with the fox, I can then do all the rest of the forget-me-nots and the grass and just finish this corner up and it'll be done. Oops, I can just feel I've pulled the thread out. Oh no, I'll finish it off though. Oh, it's really taking shape now. I need to get a highlight on his nose. I need to get his eyes just getting their little sparkle. And I just need to widen his face, just that little bit. Just here, either side needs to be a little wider. Well, that's better already. I'm widening his face there by about, well, over 1/8 of an inch. And just go back up. Make sure I can't see green in the middle. I think that's done it. It's made it better anyway. Well, it makes his body look a bit shorter, but he's supposed to be turning round, so I think he is a bit foreshortened. I think that's okay. I'll know when I've got it finished. So I'll just use this bit of thread up, going down his body. Give his back some highlight, and then I'll just come and put something else on his face, and then I'll be on to the grass and the rest of his tail. Oh, and grey on his legs. I'm just going to put a line at the top of his nose. I'm not sure whether I really should have done this as a pale grey maybe, but I'll try it. Get my needle up in the right place. Just put one line. And then up to his eyes, and a tiny little line here too. On this one, this looks like it needs a bit more sewing. I think that's okay. So I now can finish him just here now. I think he looks quite good. I think I'm just going to leave the fox for the moment and see if I can just fill some more grass and what have you in, because I just need to take it a bit further on. So I'll put this linen in my needle so I can do the foreground stitching. And I can overstitch this with a few different colours, but as long as the pale stuff is right at the front. It uses up quick though when you're making long stitches like this. I'm just supporting this embroidery underneath, because with the long stitches, even though it's hooped, there's still a risk that it can get very pulled. So I'm just supporting what I've got, especially when I've worked on it so much with all these layers. Really needs re-stretching into the hoop again. Right at the edge, so I'm going to actually alter my hoop. think I've done as much grass as I want to, and so I'm just doing the very last finishing touches, which are putting the rest of the forget-me-nots in. And so I'm using the crewel wool in a very pale blue, and I'm just doing a 1 wrap French knot because they're farther away, and so I've got the deepest blue at the front and then a mid blue and then this really pale blue, and the pale blue will just make it look all misty and far away. That's the general idea anyway. So 1 wrap down to the fabric, and just wherever my needle comes up, that's where I'm going to put one in because I need lots. And so I just aim for where I've been before. The only thing is the crewel wool gets twisted really quickly, so I keep having to untwist. So 1 wrap for these farther away ones, and I'll do 2 wraps for the foreground ones. I've laid in some very pale ones into the distance, and I'm just taking these 2 wrap French knots across the foreground in the darkest colour, and then I'll be able to put some mid-ground ones in afterwards. But I just thought I'd take some forget-me-nots right across the fox's legs, so he really looks like he's standing in among them. This blue looks really lovely. And I can just wander about with these French knots and just fill up the foreground. I'll just go till I'm at the end of my thread, and then I'll change colour to the mid-ground, and that way I bring the whole thing on together. And I can see which bit needs to be worked on more or which bit needs to be worked on less. If you do one piece to completion and work across it, well, sometimes you might get stuck on having to do that when you don't want to. Maybe that's just the way I sort of work. I like to try and bring the whole thing on together. It's the same way of sort of going in somewhere with a few stitches and then thickening it up. I sort of have that whole thing going on with a whole picture. Do a little bit all over the place and then keep adding more until you're happy, rather than do one corner and work the whole thing to completion as you're working across. That just doesn't work for me. I sort of need to see the whole picture coming together and then keep adding stitches till I know I've done it. But everybody has to find their own way that they can work. And everybody won't be the same. But after years and years, I definitely know how I like to work. And that's not just embroidery, that could be painting or anything. Right, I think that's the last one of them I can get in. I'll just bring my needle to the front, I'll take a little stitch, I'll lead it underneath, and lead it underneath again, and then I can cut that off. All I've done today, I think, is pull my needle off my thread. Okay, so mid-ground, let's have a look. I've just realised I've got coal dust on because I've just put my fire on. In between the battery running out on the camera, I thought I'm too cold. I need the fire on for later because it's all cold here again. So I went and put the fire on, and came straight back to do the stitching. I do like doing French knots, especially when they're just randomly going in like this. Can you see that I'm pulling them to the surface of the fabric every single time? I might not hold them down right up here, but I always pull down. Oops. I'd like to walk through a forget-me-not field like this. I think it would be so romantic and beautiful. There's a bird singing in my yard, and if it wasn't so freezing and raining and I'd just put the fire on, I would have opened the door so you could have heard it. I think it's a blackbird. Oh, I've just realised I haven't put his whiskers on. I've got the thread to one side somewhere. I have to do that next. I'm on to the absolutely final thing, and that is putting the little fox's whiskers in. And I've got one strand of black in my needle, and I'm hoping that it's just not too thick. Don't think you can really see them very well. I'm just going to very carefully, I can hardly stitch through here now, there's so much stitching on it. Just going to make the suggestion of the whiskers. I think there'll be curling down one coming here. And I'll put the same on the other side. Put one out to there. I've finished all of the forget-me-nots, and I was going to, originally I kept thinking, oh, I'm going to put cow parsley on. But of course the cow parsley isn't out at the same time as forget-me-nots. It was just me getting carried away with flowers. So I've actually just put a little clump of dandelions in the corner to add another little extra bit of colour. But when I've finished these bits here, I'm actually going to take it out off the hoop, and I'm going to finish the whole thing up so that it's ready to send to the winner. So I'm just going to finish that off, and how many times have I done that today? I'll have to finish that off in a second. I'm actually going to finish this off now, take it out of the hoop and get the whole thing stretched ready so it's ready to send, and I'll come back to you with when it's finished. Well, I'm pleased to say Leslie's piece of stitching got finished, and here it is, and I'm really pleased with it. A little fox caught in the field of forget-me-nots, and I've put my name, and for Lesley, I haven't put my name, I've put my bow and arrow on the back and stretched it ready so that if she wants to frame it, she can put it straight into a frame if she wants. Otherwise, it can be just propped up somewhere. And so I'm really pleased that I have got this done at last. It took me a while to get started. I had so many other projects. And it's going to be winging its way to Lesley. And when I know that she's got it, then I'll be able to post the video showing you just some of the stitching of it. I can't show you it all. It took me over 2 days altogether, so there was a lot of stitching went into it, and I'll show you the highlights, and I hope you like it. Thanks a lot, everyone.